The stars shimmered against the dark canvas of space as Jack Collins stared at the monitor. His eyes were tired from hours of watching the same screen, but he couldn't look away. After 30 years working for the International Space Agency, this was the moment he had waited for his entire life. Director Collins, we've confirmed the signal pattern. It's repeating exactly every 73 seconds, said Lisa Morgan, pushing her glasses up her nose. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as data streamed in from deep space satellites. Jack nodded. And you're certain it's not one of ours? 100% certain. The signal originates from beyond Neptune's orbit and uses compression algorithms we've never seen before. This is it, Jack. This is first contact. The ISA command center hummed with nervous energy as technicians and scientists moved between stations. News of the signal had reached only the highest levels of government so far, but Jack knew that wouldn't last. Humanity was about to change forever. 3 days later, Lisa burst into Jack's office without knocking. Her normally neat appearance was disheveled, and she clutched a tablet to her chest. I broke it. The code, I mean. I broke the code. Her eyes were wide with excitement. It's a language pattern unlike anything on Earth, but the mathematical foundation is universal. What does it say? Jack asked, standing up from his desk. Lisa placed the tablet down. 3 words, repeated over and over. Prepare for negotiation. Within a week, the signal changed. The unknown visitors sent detailed instructions for creating a receiving station at Armstrong Lunar Base. President Olivia Hawkins authorized the construction despite security concerns. Earth needed to know what they were facing. The emissary arrived exactly when predicted. A small craft that reflected light in impossible ways landed silently on the lunar surface. Out stepped a being that seemed both organic and mechanical, silver skin that moved like liquid, with limbs that adjusted their length as needed. Jack stood in the reception chamber with Lisa and 5 armed guards. His mouth felt dry as the being approached. I speak for the Arvaxian Collective, the emissary said in perfect English. We control 300 systems across this sector of the galaxy. Earth has been noticed. We welcome peaceful contact, Jack replied, following the script approved by world leaders. Peace requires order. Order requires hierarchy. The emissary's face had no expressions, just a smooth silver surface with 3 glowing blue spots arranged in a triangle. The collective offers Earth membership and protection. Over the next 6 hours, the emissary outlined the terms. Earth would surrender 30% of all natural resources. Military development would cease. Arvaxian overseers would be placed in all major governments. In return, humans would receive limited access to space travel and protection from less generous species. These terms are not negotiable, the emissary concluded. You have 7 Earth days to accept. Lisa whispered to Jack, they're not asking for an alliance. They want submission. Back on Earth, President Hawkins called an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, expanded to include representatives from every nation. They've done this before, said Dr. Paul Rodriguez, chief scientist of the Global Defense Initiative. He displayed images from the emissary's craft that Lisa had secretly captured. These symbols match ancient carvings found in the Gobi Desert and underwater ruins near Cuba. They'd visited before, watching us, waiting until we developed enough to be useful. Admiral Kate Winters stood next. If their technology display is accurate, we can't win a direct confrontation. Their ships could reach Earth in hours, not the years it takes us to reach Mars. The council chamber fell silent as the weight of the situation settled on everyone. President Hawkins spoke quietly. We faced the most important decision in human history. Do we surrender our freedom for safety, or do we stand, even if it means facing destruction? No one spoke as she called for an unprecedented emergency global vote. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. The United Nations complex in Geneva buzzed with tension. Leaders from every nation sat in the grand chamber, faces grim under the harsh lights. This was not a normal meeting. The future of the human race would be decided today. William Grant, the American delegate, stood up first. His gray suit looked wrinkled, as if he had slept in it. "We should consider their offer carefully," he said. "History shows that fighting superior forces leads to disaster. Perhaps we can negotiate better terms over time." Murmurs filled the room. Several other delegates nodded in agreement. Admiral Kate Winters walked to the center of the room next. Her uniform was crisp, but dark circles under her eyes revealed her exhaustion. "I won't lie to you," she said. "Our best weapons would be like throwing rocks at a tank. The Arvaxians have ships that can cross space in days, while our fastest vessel takes years to reach Mars. If we fight, we face destruction." Fear spread across the room like a wave. President Hawkins watched silently from her seat, hands folded tightly together. Then Dr. Paul Rodriguez stepped forward, carrying a small metal case. He opened it to reveal a glowing blue vial. "2 days ago, we made a discovery," he said. "When examining samples taken from the lunar meeting room, we found something strange. Human DNA causes unusual reactions in Arvaxian technology." He played a video showing a drop of human blood touching an Arvaxian metal sample. The metal curled away like it was in pain. "We've been studying signals from their ships. Their systems show small errors when near human populations. It's slight, but real. Humanity has something unique in the galaxy, something they fear." The room grew quiet as everyone considered this information. Lisa Morgan joined Paul at the front. "We also found this in their language patterns." She showed a chart on the main screen. "They've conquered hundreds of worlds, but they always warn us about less generous species. We think they're afraid of something out there, and they're building armies from conquered worlds." Jack Collins spoke next. "The Arvaxians aren't offering membership. They want soldiers and resources. If we accept, we become their slaves, fighting their enemies across the stars." President Hawkins finally stood. The room fell completely silent. "We face an impossible choice," she said. "Submit and live as servants, or refuse and risk everything. But I ask you this, what makes humanity special? Is it our cities? Our technology? No, it's our freedom. Our right to choose our own path." She looked around the room slowly, meeting the eyes of leaders from every continent. "I propose a global vote, not just from us in this room, but from every government on Earth. We stand together, or we fall together." For the next 24 hours, the world held its breath. Governments debated. People prayed. Families held each other close, wondering if these were their final days of freedom. When the votes were counted, President Hawkins called Jack Collins to her office. He found her staring out the window at the Washington Monument, glowing in the evening light. "It was unanimous," she said without turning around. "Every nation voted the same way. We refuse their terms." Jack felt his heart beating fast. "What happens now?" "Now you go back to the moon," she said, finally facing him. "You tell them humanity's answer." 3 days later, Jack stood before the Arvaxian emissary in the cold lunar meeting room. Lisa stood beside him, along with 2 guards. "We have considered your generous offer," Jack said carefully, "and we have decided that humanity will not negotiate its freedom. Not today. Not ever." The emissary's silver face rippled like disturbed water. The 3 blue lights flashed brighter. "This is unfortunate," it said. "The collective expected better judgment. You will regret this decision." It turned and walked back to its ship without another word. As they watched the alien craft rise from the lunar surface, Lisa whispered, "What have we done?" Jack didn't answer. He knew the Arvaxians would return, and when they did, Earth would face the consequences of its defiance. They came 7 days later, just as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean. 50 massive ships appeared in Earth's orbit, each one larger than the biggest human aircraft carrier. Their hulls gleamed with a metallic sheen that shifted colors in the sunlight. The world watched in horror as smaller craft poured from the larger ships, descending toward Earth like metallic raindrops. Warning systems blared across every continent. Captain Alan Pierce stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, the newest and most advanced warship in Earth's small space fleet. His hands gripped the command rail tightly as he watched the enemy approach on the main screen. "Orders from command, sir," his communications officer said. "We are to engage and delay the enemy forces while civilian evacuations continue." Alen nodded grimly. "Tell all ships to form defensive pattern Delta. Target the smaller craft first." The battle began minutes later. Earth's ships fired their most powerful weapons, but most missiles exploded harmlessly against the Arvaxian shields. Laser systems that could cut through meters of steel barely left scorch marks on the alien hulls. On the ground, the first attacks targeted military bases and defense systems. Precision strikes from orbit destroyed missile silos, Air Force bases, and naval ports. The Arvaxians were methodical, eliminating Earth's ability to fight back. In an underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Susan Blackwell worked frantically. After the lunar meeting, she had been given access to all the data on the Arvaxian samples. Now, surrounded by the best minds in genetics, she raced to understand why human DNA affected alien technology. "There's something in our genetic code," she told her team as alarms sounded above them. "Something that creates a quantum field the Arvaxians can't replicate or counter. If we can amplify it." Her words were cut off as the facility shook from a nearby impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. "We need more time," she whispered. In orbit, the U.S. Defiant had somehow survived the first hour of battle. Captain Pierce had discovered that rapid random maneuvers confused the Arvaxian targeting systems. 3 other Earth ships had adopted his tactics and still fought alongside him. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "the enemy is deploying something new. Large cylinders descending toward major cities." Alen watched as dozens of massive objects slowly dropped toward Earth. Intelligence identified them as planet crackers, weapons that could split open a planet's crust. "Target those cylinders with everything we have," he ordered. "All ships, focus fire." The remaining Earth fleet converged on the new threat, throwing everything they had at the planet crackers. Most of their attacks failed, but a few cylinders exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Then something unexpected happened. As the first planet crackers positioned themselves over densely populated cities, they began to malfunction. Their energy fields flickered and failed. Several drifted off course. Others shut down completely. On the Arvaxian command ship, Commander Zexthal received troubling reports. "The weapons are experiencing cascading failures when positioned over human population centers," an officer reported. Zexthal's silver face rippled with frustration. "Deploy ground forces," he ordered. "If we cannot destroy them from orbit, we will eliminate them directly." Dropships began falling toward Earth by the thousands. Troops in silvery armor poured out, armed with weapons that fired bursts of energy that melted through buildings and vehicles. Back in the underground lab, Susan Blackwell stared at her computer screen in disbelief. "The planet crackers failed," she said. "They couldn't operate near large human populations." She turned to her team, eyes wide with realization. "That confirms my theory. Something about humans disrupts their most advanced technology." Above ground, humanity faced its darkest hour. Cities burned as Arvaxian ground forces advanced across every continent. The small victories in space meant little as Earth's defenders were overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. But in the ashes of defeat, the seeds of resistance were already taking root. A weakness had been found. Humanity had 3 months of brutal war ahead before they would understand how to use it. 3 months into the war, the world looked very different. Major cities lay in ruins. Billions of people lived in underground shelters or remote areas. The Arvaxians controlled most of North America, Europe, and Asia. Yet humanity had not surrendered. Deep in the Colorado Mountain Complex, Dr. Susan Blackwell and Dr. Paul Rodriguez worked tirelessly. Their lab was crowded with equipment salvaged from universities and research centers across the country. "I think I've got it," Susan said, looking up from her microscope. Her face was thin from too many missed meals, But her eyes shone with excitement. The quantum field theory was correct. Paul hurried over. "Show me." Susan pointed to a screen displaying a complex pattern of energy waves. Every human cell produces a tiny quantum field. Individually, they're too weak to notice. But put enough humans together, and the field becomes strong enough to disrupt our vaccine tech, Paul finished. That's why their planet crackers failed over cities. Exactly. And I think we can amplify it. In occupied New York, Diana Fletcher moved silently through the ruins of Manhattan. Once a business executive, now she led one of the largest resistance cells in North America. 20 fighters followed her, each carrying homemade explosives. Their target was an Arvaxian command post established in what used to be Grand Central Station. Intelligence suggested it coordinated all enemy movements in the Northeast. "Remember," Diana whispered, "plant the charges and move on. No heroics." As they approached the station, an Arvaxian patrol rounded the corner. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall in their silver armor, carrying weapons that could turn a human to ash in seconds. Diana signaled her team to freeze. They pressed against the rubble, barely breathing. Strangely, the patrol seemed disoriented. One alien repeatedly hit the side of its helmet. Another stumbled as if drunk. "Their systems are glitching," one of Diana's fighters whispered, just like the report said. Diana nodded. This confirmed what they'd heard from other cells. The longer Arvaxians stayed near humans, the more their technology malfunctioned. In the Colorado complex, Jack Collins met with military leaders from around the world. Maps on the wall showed Arvaxian positions and the few remaining free territories. "Dr. Blackwell's discovery changes everything," Jack said. "We need to implement Operation Quantum Shield immediately." Admiral Kate Winters nodded. "My submarine fleet is ready. The Arvaxians still can't track us underwater." General Sam Reeves, commander of the remaining ground forces, looked skeptical. "Even if this works, we're still outnumbered and outgunned." "Not necessarily," Jack replied. "We've been gathering intelligence from captured Arvaxian data cores. Their ground troops are experiencing increasing equipment failures, and there's something else." He played a video showing human prisoners aboard an Arvaxian transport ship. As the humans were moved through the vessel, nearby systems began to fail. Lights flickered. Doors opened and closed randomly. "They didn't expect this," Jack said, "and they don't understand why it's happening." Across the Atlantic Ocean, the first major counterattack was about to begin. 5 submarines carrying Special Forces teams approached an Arvaxian underwater base. The teams were equipped with devices Susan had created, small emitters that amplified the human quantum field. Captain Alan Pierce, reassigned after the destruction of the U.S. Defiant, led the mission. His submarine, the Barracuda, carried the main strike team. "All units in position," his communications officer reported. "Begin Operation Quantum Shield," Alan ordered. The teams deployed, swimming toward the alien base. As they approached, the base's external defenses began to fail. Sensor arrays shut down. Automated weapons platforms went offline. On the Arvaxian command ship in orbit, Commander Zexthal received disturbing news. "Atlantic base has gone silent," an officer reported, "and we're losing contact with ground units across multiple sectors." Zexthal's silver face rippled with what might have been concern. "This is impossible. How can primitives defeat our technology?" "There's more," the officer continued. "The Supreme Council is demanding explanations. No species has ever resisted us this long." For the first time since the invasion began, Zexthal felt something new: doubt. On Earth, the Battle of the Atlantic Trench marked humanity's first major victory. As news spread through resistance networks, hope began to grow. The tide was turning, and the Arvaxians were about to learn why humans should never be underestimated. 1 year after the Arvaxians arrived, the war had changed. Humanity was no longer running and hiding. They were fighting back. In a repurposed factory deep beneath the ruins of Detroit, Ryan Martinez watched his team assemble the newest version of the quantum amplifiers. Once an auto engineer, Ryan now led the largest manufacturing effort on the planet. These are 10 times stronger than the first models, he explained to Jack Collins, who had come to see their progress. One device can protect an area of 5 square miles. Jack picked up one of the finished amplifiers. It looked simple, a small metal box with a glowing blue core. But inside was technology that combined human ingenuity with the quantum field that made humans unique in the universe. How many can you make? Jack asked. With the current facilities, 500 per week, Ryan answered. If we get the Chicago bunker online, we can double that. Jack nodded. Do it. Admiral Winters is ready to launch the naval offensive. 3 days later, a fleet of ships emerged from hidden docks along the coast of Australia. Each vessel carried dozens of quantum amplifiers. Admiral Kate Winters stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as her ships formed up. All vessels report ready, Admiral, her second-in-command said. Begin Operation Tidal Wave, Kate ordered. The fleet moved toward the Arvaxian bases that controlled the Pacific. For months, the aliens had believed the human navies completely destroyed. They were about to learn otherwise. As the ships approached the enemy positions, the quantum amplifiers activated. Arvaxian sensors failed. Their defensive systems shut down. Their communications went silent. The human fleet opened fire. For the first time, their weapons struck without resistance. Arvaxian vessels exploded or listed helplessly as their systems failed. In New York, Diana Fletcher's resistance fighters made their move. With quantum amplifiers strapped to their backs, they stormed the Arvaxian command center at Grand Central. The aliens' weapons sputtered and died as the resistance fighters got close. Diana led the charge, firing her rifle at the confused aliens. For Earth, she shouted as they pushed forward. Similar attacks happened across the globe as resistance cells coordinated through hidden networks. London, Moscow, Beijing, Rio de Janeiro. In every occupied city, humans rose up, protected by the technology that exploited their unique advantage. The Arvaxian ground forces found themselves stranded. Their orbital support couldn't reach them through the quantum interference. Their supply ships couldn't land. Their advanced weapons worked only at long range, away from human concentrations. In space, Captain Alan Pierce commanded Earth's new defense fleet. Built in secret lunar facilities, these ships incorporated quantum amplifiers into their very hulls. Multiple Arvaxian vessels approaching, his sensor officer reported. They appear to be attempting to reinforce their ground troops. Intercept course, Alan ordered. Let's show them what these new ships can do. The battle was short but fierce. The human vessels moved close to the Arvaxian ships, their quantum fields disrupting enemy systems. The aliens, unable to understand what was happening, fell back in disarray. On the Arvaxian command ship, Commander Zexthal received a message from the Collective Supreme Council. The Council demands immediate resolution. The message read, "If you cannot control the humans, diplomatic measures must be attempted." Zexthal sent back his response. Humans cannot be reasoned with. They refused negotiation before. They will not accept terms now. Hours later, 3 Arvaxian ships approached Earth under white flags, the universal symbol for parley. They requested a meeting with Earth's leaders. In the White House bunker, President Olivia Hawkins received this news with a grim smile. "They want to talk now," she asked Jack Collins. "Now that we're winning." "What should I tell them?" Jack asked. Olivia remembered the arrogance of the Arvaxian emissary a year ago. She remembered the billions who had died when humanity refused their terms. "Tell them exactly what they told us," she said. "The time for negotiation has passed." Instead, she approved Operation Starburst, the plan to take the fight to Arvaxian space. The hunters would become the hunted. Humanity was going to the stars, and the Arvaxians would face the consequences of their invasion. 6 captured Arvaxian data cores sat on the table in Susan Blackwell's lab. Each contained thousands of years of alien records, finally translated by Lisa Morgan's linguistics team. "You need to see this," Susan said as Jack Collins entered the room. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. Jack looked at the screen where Susan pointed. The display showed genetic sequences, one human and one alien. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "The truth about humanity," Susan replied. "We were never supposed to exist." Lisa joined them, holding a tablet filled with translated text. According to their records, humans were designed by a race called the Precursors. We were engineered as weapons. Jack sat down heavily. "Weapons? Against what?" "Against the Arvaxians," Susan explained. "The Precursors were the first advanced species in our part of the galaxy. The Arvaxians destroyed them in a war 50,000 years ago. But before they died out, the Precursors seeded Earth with modified primates, our ancestors." Lisa scrolled through more text on her tablet. "They designed us to emit the quantum field as a defense mechanism. The field disrupts the core technology the Arvaxians stole from the Precursors. We're living countermeasures." "The Arvaxians knew this," Susan added. "They've been monitoring Earth for millennia, watching in horror as we evolved. They expected us to die out. When we didn't, they decided to conquer us before we reached space." Jack processed this information slowly. "So when we refused to negotiate, we terrified them," Lisa finished. "No species has ever resisted them successfully. Now they know why we can." In orbit around Mars, Greg Bennett prepared for the most important mission in human history. As the pilot of the experimental ship Nova, he would lead the first strike into Arvaxian territory. The Nova wasn't large, just big enough for its crew of 12. But it carried 50 quantum amplifiers and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Most importantly, it had engines reverse-engineered from captured Arvaxian vessels. "Final systems check complete," his co-pilot announced. "All green." Greg looked at his crew. They were the best Earth had to offer. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers who had survived a year of brutal war. "Today we take the fight to them," he said, "for everyone we've lost." The Nova disappeared into the darkness of space, followed by 5 similar ships. Operation Starburst had begun. Meanwhile, resistance across the galaxy was growing. Jack Collins stood before a secure video link, speaking to aliens he never imagined existed, representatives from 28 species who had been conquered by the Arvaxians. "The quantum field technology works for any biological life form," he explained. "Implant these devices in your resistance fighters, and the Arvaxians will be vulnerable." An alien with blue skin and 4 eyes leaned forward. "Your species has accomplished in 1 year what we couldn't in centuries. The Dravidian systems are ready to rebel when you give the signal." Similar messages came from across the Arvaxian collective. The conquered worlds had watched Earth's resistance with growing hope. Now they were ready to fight for their own freedom. In deep space, the Nova and its sister ships approached the first Arvaxian colony world. Intelligence from rebel aliens had identified it as a minor outpost with minimal defenses. "No sign they've detected us," Greg's sensor officer reported. "Take us in," Greg ordered. "Prepare to deploy the amplifiers." As the human ships entered the system, alarms sounded on the Arvaxian homeworld billions of miles away. The Supreme Council gathered in emergency session. "We face catastrophe," the head counselor announced to the assembled leaders. "Reports of rebellion come from 20 systems. The humans have shared their quantum technology with our subjects." Commander Zexfall, recalled from Earth, stood before them. "I warned you about the humans. They cannot be controlled. Then they must be destroyed," the head counselor declared. "Prepare the void weapon." But even as the council plotted humanity's destruction, their most secure facility came under attack. The Nova and its fleet had bypassed the colony world. It was merely a distraction. Their real target was the heart of Arvaxian power. Greg Bennett's voice echoed across human and alien resistance channels throughout the galaxy. "Operation Starburst is complete. The Arvaxian Supreme Council has fallen." The news spread like wildfire. After thousands of years of oppression, the collective was collapsing. And humanity, the species that refused to negotiate, had struck the final blow. 5 years after humanity refused to negotiate, the galaxy looked very different. The Arvaxian Collective no longer existed. In its place stood the Galactic Cooperative, an alliance of free worlds working together as equals. Earth had become the center of this new order. Once a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, it now hosted representatives from hundreds of species. The old United Nations building in New York had been rebuilt and expanded to become the Galactic Assembly. Lisa Morgan walked through its grand halls, nodding to aliens of all shapes and sizes. As the head of the Interspecies Communication Division, she had helped create the universal translation system that allowed the diverse beings to understand each other. She entered the main chamber where Jack Collins waited. His hair had turned gray over the past 5 years, but his eyes still held the same determination. "Ready for the ceremony?" Lisa asked. Jack adjusted his formal suit. "As ready as I'll ever be." Today marked the official signing of the Freedom Accords, the document that would formalize the new galactic government. President Olivia Hawkins would represent Earth, alongside Jack as the chief diplomat. "I never imagined this when we refused their terms," Jack said quietly. "I just wanted Earth to remain free. And instead, we freed the galaxy," Lisa replied with a smile. The chamber filled with delegates from every world. Some floated in special atmosphere tanks. Others towered over the humans. A few were so small they needed raised platforms to be seen. President Hawkins entered to respectful silence. 5 years of war and rebuilding had left her looking older, but she moved with the confidence of a leader who had guided her people through their darkest hours. "Fellow sentients," she began, "today we formalize what began when a small planet refused to surrender its freedom. The Freedom Accords ensure no species will ever again face the tyranny the Arvaxians imposed." As she spoke, Susan Blackwell sat in her laboratory on the other side of the world. Her research into the human quantum field had expanded to include all biological life. On a screen before her, she watched as DNA from 30 different species showed compatible patterns. The precursors didn't just create humans, she told her multi-species research team. They left genetic markers in dozens of species across the galaxy. We're all connected by their legacy. This discovery had transformed the quantum field technology. No longer just a weapon, it now served as a protective shield that all worlds shared freely. The same field that disrupted Arvaxian technology could be tuned to enhance communication, healing, and cooperation. In orbit above Earth, Greg Bennett watched from the observation deck of the space station Unity. Below him, the planet shone blue and green, largely healed from the war. New cities had been built using a blend of human and alien technology. His communicator chimed. "Captain Bennett, your transport to Mars is ready," a voice announced. Greg took one last look at Earth before heading to the shuttle bay. After years commanding the Nova on missions throughout the former collective, he had accepted a new position at the Mars colony, overseeing the first truly multi-species settlement in the solar system. The Mars colony had become a symbol of the new order. Originally built as a military base during the war, it now hosted hundreds of families from dozens of worlds. Children of multiple species played together in specially designed habitats, learning each other's languages and cultures. As Greg's shuttle approached the red planet, he saw the gleaming domes of the colony spread across the Valles Marineris Canyon. The largest dome in the center housed the main plaza, where a monument stood, a simple stone obelisk with words in multiple languages that all translated to the same phrase: "Freedom is never negotiable." The shuttle landed smoothly. Greg stepped out onto Martian soil and breathed the manufactured air. A group of children ran past, human, Dravidian, and 3 other species, all laughing together. He watched them with a smile, remembering the day humanity had refused to negotiate. That refusal had cost billions of lives and years of suffering, but it had also sparked a revolution that toppled an empire and united a galaxy. As the sun set over the Martian landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Greg knew that the universe would never be the same. and neither would humanity.